Shay Russell for mining.com.au, and for something different today, I have two fabulous guests for you. I have the Managing Director of Venture Minerals, Philippa Leggat, and I have the CEO of Lion Selection Group, Hedley Widdup. Hedley and Philippa, how are you today?
Hey, Shay. Good.
G'day, Shay. Good. Nice to be chatting to you both.
I'm thrilled to have you both on because since Lion Selection Group has staked an investment in Venture Minerals, I've been dying to have you on personally, Hedley, to find out what made Lion Selection Group make this decision, because Jupiter is a fantastic rare earth deposit, but I want to hear from the CEO. What made you want to invest in this company?
Persistence on Philippa's behalf.
I'll take that.
Well, I mean, we're a long-term investor, and we try to spot contrarian or good value plays. So, you know, we've very rarely been motivated by here's a hot, fast-moving area, let's throw some money in it and see what happens. So, we've had our eyes on rare earths for quite a while, and the thing which has always confounded us, where's the best place to put this money? Rare earths brings metallurgical complexity, so you've got to try and strip out other risks. Didn't want to take jurisdictional risks on top of any of that, and wanted to be backing a team that you could say, here's some great technical competency to go along with that, and they're going to do the right work in the right order. So Venture ticked all those boxes, but I guess the thing which really drew our eye to Venture rather than any of the others in this instance was to be successful in a space like rare earths, you've got to be large, you've got to be high grade, and you've got to be close to the things that you might need to value add. And Venture ticks all those boxes. I mean, it's a very large footprint. It's shallow. It's got wonderful grade in the drilling that they've done. And there's a couple of upgrading plants. You couldn't pick it up and chuck it. It's a bit further than that, but, you know, they're close. They're in the same state. So, and, you know, the major highways which go right past these guys go to those places. So those things were the selling points for me.
Now, Philippa, Lion Selection Group has made a $1 million stake in the business. The investment made from Lion Selection Group was also part of an overall new capital raising strategy. Tell me, what was the driving force behind your capital raising strategy?
Well, to lead on from a lot of the points that Hedley mentioned, right? You have metallurgical complexity in most rare earths deposits. You're trying to pull out 17 elements. It's not just like gold where you've got one thing that you can focus on. So you have to get your head around quite a lot. It has to be big enough to be worth doing. And as soon as you've got something of the sort of scale that we're talking about with Jupiter, you need time to do the work, right? You can't try and do it like most junior companies do. They go out to the market, try and have a sugar hit and raise capital off the back of that. The question with metallurgy is always an open-ended one. If we try this, what happens, right? It's not like assay results where you get a black and white answer that you know this is the quantum of everything that sits within this hole, right? So you need the time to be able to do the work to understand what's coming through so that you can get really good, meaningful results. And I come at it from a perspective of when you are putting material into the plant, you've built a plant, you want to make sure that the ore that goes into that plant is designed to match, right? Because otherwise you have commissioning disasters, which are already hard without those complexities, right? And even before you get to that point, the financiers go through things with a fine-tooth comb. So you will be taken out right at that point when you've spent tens to hundreds of millions of dollars advancing a project, depending on the project, right? And then it all falls apart because you haven't done the foundational work right. So funding it this way means we've got the time to pay attention to the asset, make sure we can use our really good people to deliver meaningful results so that when we come to studies, there is actually some sound basis for the work that we're doing at that stage.
Hedley, I want to come to you on this point. Now, obviously, Lion Selection Group is a cornerstone investor in Venture Minerals. How did you feel with this approach?
Well, I suppose one of the parts of the discussion that we had with our board about pitching this was we're very familiar with gold, we're very familiar with base metals, and if you're assessing a project like a gold or a copper project in this market, if you discover something which has got an enormous footprint, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a really expensive drill out. And I think a lot of investors that want to see something de-risked will say, well, we could invest now, but if we invest later, we'll probably get in just as cheaply, or the liquidity will come back to us. In the case of this particular, rare earth deposits generally, but specifically for the case of Jupiter, they've got the money they need to drill this out to a PFS quality. They've got the money they need to do that metallurgical test work. And it's like Philippa said, it's not a case of taking one sample from one end of a gold deposit and saying, well, that looks like it'll match the whole thing. You can make those assumptions in some metals. So here we are with something which I would argue, you can get to a very advanced stage of study. I'm not going to say PFS because I'd be putting words in Philippa's mouth. You can get a long way down the track here with the money that they've got, and for the 6 which they've raised, and there's a bit more coming in for a project sale. For that money, the equivalent, I would say, for a gold deposit, particularly of the large strategic size that we have here, you might be talking 50, 60 million bucks to make that kind of project progress elsewhere. So we were looking at this saying, well, if someone else wants to come in and needs to be involved in a Western Australian based, strategically sized, attractive in the market because it's high grade, rare earths deposit, which is, you ask any government around the world, this is going to be mentioned by Donald Trump and Camilla Harris when they're debating. They'll be talking about rare earths and critical minerals and those kinds of things, right? That's how important they are. You've got to be in a good area to be able to dig this up and provide the certainty to sell it and everything else. If institutions want to get into that from here, they got to buy it on market. If they buy on market, then the price goes up. So, we really like the squeeze which sits behind it from that perspective as well.
I want to touch lightly on the general investment climate, which you so neatly led me to, Hedley. So I'm going to stick with you for the moment. It has been a bit of a depressed market in the juniors and the small cap sector, in the micro cap sector especially. But Lion Selection Group making this stake in the business is not only a vote of confidence in venture minerals, but it sort of tells to me that perhaps the retail market is at risk of missing broader opportunities if institutional companies are making these investments. Do you take a view on this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the part of the question is why now? And that is as much stock specific, we've just gone through that, as market specific. I mean, we watch the market cycle very, very closely because we see buying signals and we see selling signals, and it's important to align your investing to that. When interest rates started to go up in 2021, 22, that was what took the risk appetite out of the market. And retail, instos, you name them, they fell away, but specifically from micro caps and small caps. So those were the stocks which suffered the most. And it didn't matter if you were trying to sell rare earths or ice creams. You were sold down because you were small. We've seen that sort of progress, and that sentiment has got to the point, I think, where you could say, can it get any worse? And I think most investors are now saying, well, it couldn't, but do we go? So we can see a market which is ripe for coming back. And I think if you, one of the best examples that I've seen for, I suppose, is that sentiment correct, is that for the last 2 or 3 years, even with a reasonably well appreciating price in gold, we weren't seeing the explorers and the developers kicking up. But in the last, I would say, probably 2 months or even one, we've started to see those riskier stories start to get some investor attention. Now, when that happens in gold, it'll spread out across the rest of the market, and it's got a fundamental to it, right? So you have some success in the story now. I think you could start to have the confidence that that market has gone through the worst period for sentiment towards small caps. So great time for explorers to be starting to think about what the next 2 years look like. And for an investor like us, great time to be getting involved before the rest of the market does.
I'm going to pull on some threads of what you just said in a second, Hedley, but Philippa, I just want to bounce back to you from a geopolitical lens on this. Now, as Hedley pointed out, rare earths are going to be quite topical at this US election. Now, obviously, having a rare earth project in Australia, there is a slight bias here, but I'm sure investors do want to know how rare earth companies can put forward realistic outlooks and framework when the price is controlled by essentially the Chinese market. Is it too soon for you to be making comments on this?
Oh, look, none of us really know what's going on because it is the Chinese market, right? And I think with commodities that are traded in such an opaque market, you're always going to have this to a degree. You saw some success with lithium when Pilbara actually started to pull that out of an opaque sense with their auction platform and bring it into the daylight. That really shifted the way the world saw lithium pricing, and you saw massive price increases off the back of that because it was brought out of the daylight. There is a lot of commentary about the Chinese artificially depressing pricing at the moment. They are apparently running those refineries of theirs at 120%. That clearly is with the intent to try and keep the pricing market as low as possible. The big producers are still getting it done, but they're struggling, right? It's hard. Nobody can sustain this forever. Something's got to give. And it's not just about pricing, it is largely about those geopolitical constraints. We need in the West to secure supply of these commodities ex-China. So somebody's going to make this work, and governments can't afford not to throw money at making this happen and supporting it through various initiatives, right? That's direct cash, that's incentives, however it looks. And you are actually seeing that. That's out of Europe, that's out of the US, and Australia is even starting to do that shift, right? So the timing for us, we believe, is good. You got to hang in there, right? None of us know when that shift is going to happen. But in the meantime, it's get the work done, do it right, so that when there is a shift in pricing, we really are in a position to take advantage of it. So, heads down, bum up, go.
Perfectly leveraged. And could I just add to that, please, Shay? Because, the Chinese have had this game played on them a number of times. They know about it in iron ore. They didn't have any native supply or very little, and they had to pay for it. The price responded. Same in copper, same in lithium. And here we are with the Chinese dominating supply of rare earths. But we're now seeing deposits, large deposits being found in safe jurisdictions. And the geopolitical game, which is being played in the opposite direction of globalization, wanting to have safe supply of that outside of China. So, these are strategic investments. They're not just investing in something which is an interesting deposit. They've got this strategic angle to them as well. And the Australian, American, various governments are throwing money by way of debt to the downstream producers of these things so that they can install processing capacity. So that's going to pull ore out of the ground. And to be pulled out of the ground, there's no point being small. If you're large, there's a huge benefit for you. So.
Listen, Philippa and Hedley, it saddens me to bring today's interview to a close. I suspect we could thoroughly enjoy and take this conversation on for much longer than I'm allowed to today. Listen, Philippa, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on and talk about the Jupiter project that Venture Minerals is working on. Hedley, it is a pleasure to have your insights as well. It was an absolute pleasure. Jupiter goes from strength to strength. You've got great investors helping this company move along, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Shay.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Philippa.